In today's video, I'm going to be running you through the exact process I took that took me from point A of starting my very first army to point B making a whole Warhammer YouTube channel. And I'm going to show you exactly how you can start Warhammer 40K as a complete beginner. And the reason I'm making this video is because, well, I've been looking on YouTube recently and I see there are beginner guides, understanding, but they're all from the perspective of someone who's quite high up and plays quite high level tournaments. And so I want to make a more beginner friendly guide from the perspective of someone who's recently just become out of a beginner and someone who's done a lot of research in this field. So I want to make this video running you through the exact steps, like I said, I took to go from very first army to very first game, and all the little in-between little tweaks I did in the way is going to be able to maximize the actual playing, the building, and the painting, and mitigate all the hours and hours of research it takes to play this goddamn game. So I don't want to spend more of your time. Let's just jump straight into with exactly how you can start your very first 40k journey. Now, before we jump into the exact ways of playing your first game, building your first army, and going to your very first shop, and all the nonsense that comes before, I just want you to follow these couple of steps. This section is everything that's going to become before. So it's everything that's going to become before you even consider researching Warhammer 40,000. It's basically its preparation, its questions, and its behavior changes to yourself to understand if you truly are wanting to play Warhammer, and some important things you need to understand before you even jump into the hobby itself. So let's go over everything that comes before Warhammer 40k. The very first step in this section is going to be the very start. This is going to be a very important question I think all of you need to truly ask yourself before you even jump anywhere into Warhammer 40,000. And that is going to be, why are you doing Warhammer 40,000? And do you actually want to do Warhammer 40,000? Now, I know it sounds like a pretty stupid idea and a pretty stupid question itself because, well, obviously, watching all these videos, I clicked on your videos, so I obviously want to start Warhammer 40,000. But riddle me this. This can go from Warhammer to any hobby, but some people obviously choose it because they truly love it, but some people choose it for the sole reason of impressing somebody else, or the sole reason because they've been forced into it by friends, family, cousins, whatever. And this is a horrible way to start any hobby in itself, because hobbies take time, resources, and money to continue on. And with Warhammer taking a lot of time, a lot of resources, and and a lot of money, you kind of want to jump into this thinking you can just have a fun time and impress your friends with it, or you don't really want to do it, and then go with $2,000, $3,000, $1,000 down the drain, just like that, spending it on one single army. So, if you are starting Warhammer 40,000, I would want to stop and ask yourself these questions. Why am I doing Warhammer 40,000, and is there any strings attached in me involving starting my hobby journey, basically? And once you do this, trust me, you'll feel so much better, because A, you'll either feel like reassured that yes, I know why I'm doing this because of my own personal intent, or B, you'll save yourself time, money, and effort simply for the fact of you going, oh yeah, I was trying to impress Jack or whoever you were friends with or family. You realize you were trying to impress them, and all of a sudden you've backed off and said, I don't want to do it, I don't like it, it isn't for me, and I'm going to go now. And you might find a different hobby you truly enjoy. So I would highly recommend asking yourself this question before anything to know truly if you're doing this for the right reasons or for the maybe not so right reasons. But that's the very first step of the very beginning. The next step is going to be figuring out where you can play or who you can play with. Now, look at me. Warhammer 40k is split up into two sections in my own personal opinion, the hobby side and the playing side. Now, Warhammer can be solely isolated purely for like the hobby side, but it's a very expensive way to just paint. So usually people are spending all this money, they might as well use it for the hobby side and for the playing side to get the most bang for their buck and the most value out of these expensive plastic toys. Now, I would highly recommend the situation you find somewhere that you can play or someone you can play with, solely for the reason that you don't want to build all your army, construct everything, to find out the nearest club is 2 hours away and only holds 40k tournaments or games on a Friday. You want to have somewhere you can consistently play and practice to basically enjoy the hobby to the maximum effect. And this is where my second tip for this section comes in. That's going to be have someone close to start 40k with. I can personally say that having someone really close to you who's getting into Warhammer 40k as well is a super valuable tool that most people skimp out on. See, most people start their journey by themselves and then like introduce themselves in the club. But once you have someone by your side, collecting with you, understanding the game with you, it's so much easier to learn the game, to play the game, to have fun in the game. And so I would highly recommend getting someone close. I personally had this own experience with a couple of friends and my brother. We all started Warhammer 40K together, and we've slowly been working up our journey together, where I've played competitive games and I've played against a lot of other people. So I would highly recommend that to get into Warhammer 40,000, to understand the rules and understand everything in a fun, at your own kind of pace way, definitely get some friends involved. Get your brother, get your cousins, get your mum if you have to. Get the people who you want to get involved. It's so much fun and it's so much better. But I would highly also recommend you find somewhere to play, because having nowhere to play, whether that be at home or at a club, is a horrendous thing to find. So go on Google, do a quick Google search, dude, like Warhammer clubs near me if you have to. I did that and I actually found a bunch. So look up Warhammer clubs near me, or find someone else you can play with, where you're going to go to their house every Sunday, Saturday, whatever, and play 40k there. Whatever it may be, just have somewhere you can play and practice, and have some friends or some people along the way who you can jump with. But that's going to be the second step to everything that comes before Warhammer 40,000. Now that you've gone through all the initiating steps of Warhammer 40,000, and you've answered all the questions and done all the things I've asked you to do, you can now finally jump into the actual fundamental place of Warhammer 40,000, which is going to be the researching stage. This is the very first stage in your 40k journey that I believe is the most essentially important. This is where you're going to be learning all your information, understanding the game, and basically deploying your whole 40k direction in this stage. So it's critically important that you follow each of these steps like in the most effect, because this is what's going to set you up for the rest of your 40k journey. So let's jump straight into the researching phase. Now, the very first step that I believe you need to do in the researching stage, or the very first step in Warhammer 40,000 anyway, is going to be to figure out your playstyle. Now, playstyle is a super essential part that I believe is going to set you up for the whole game, and it's going to understand how you are going to play into the game, whether that be shooting, melee, tanking, magic, like anything. No matter what it's going to be, you need to figure it out, because what's going to set you up and give you the right direction to choose your army, choose how you play, and choose your army purpose based on your own personal play style. Now, there are many ways of doing this, and my personal example would be to probably watch an exemplar game. This is going to be just watch a 40k game. Look up 40k game, and some stuff will come up like Tyranids, Gene Stealer Cult, like versus, like, and all these weird things, and just click on a video. Click on any 40-minute video, hour-long video, and just watch it through, and look how different things are deploying. Look how specific units are making, and say, oh, I like that. Oh, they moved up here. Oh, look at that. They did some long-range shooting. Oh, look, that's some melee. I really like the idea of melee because you can get this, and this. Find out how exactly you're going to enjoy the most playstyle. Look at it and say, I think I could deploy best here. I think I could deploy best here. Find out what you're going to do best in, and you most are comfortable with performing. And if you look at it and go, damn, well, I really think I'm going to be doing good with melee because I'm really good at like pushing up the board. I think I would be good at maneuvering up the board. Then choose melee. Or go, I really like this kind of idea of shooting. I think I'd be really good at shooting. I really want to play shooting. I really like shooting armies. And you chose shooting. Now, this may change many times in your kind of like general sense, and it won't change heavily, like it won't switch entire topics, but it might go from like deploying from long range to deploying to medium range, or playing melee aggressively or playing melee like defensively. Like, it might change and orientate a little bit, but the main idea of how you want to play is going to stay very solid. Example for me, when I watched my very first 40k game, I was like, damn, I really like melee. Like, melee is awesome. I want to go with melee. And that was easily able to set me up from an idea of like performing best in melee and playing a really good role I want to play. Because if you pick a role you don't want to play, then suddenly it just kind of sucks, and you really don't want to like enjoy the game. So picking some kind of formatting you want to play in is super important to your research stage. Now that you've done like basically all the research to find out how your playstyle operates and how you want to play into the game, you can now jump into probably one of the most important steps of the research phase there is. And that's going to be to pick an army and then do way too much research. Now, picking an army, like I said, is really important. But the good thing is you really understand your playstyles. You really understand how you want to play in the game. So all of a sudden, you've got like, you can start eliminating armies. So suddenly, if you wanted to play really melee oriented, you would go, okay, well, Tau isn't very shooty, or is very shooty, so I'll get rid of them. Oh, Leagues of Votan's also shooty, I don't want to play shooty. Oh, look at this. Blood Angels and Space Wolves, they're both melee. That's pretty cool. Have a look at them. And suddenly you can really start picking and choosing and orientating how you want to play based on this. Now, there are a lot of different ways to find out how armies play, and a lot of different ways to find out and research armies. But I would highly recommend that pretty much each army has like its own dedicated YouTuber. It's pretty stupid, but like most armies, it's not stupid. It's actually cool. Most like armies have their own dedicated army. So, for example, the Blood Angels have the BA Commander. The Orcs have War Tactics and Happy Crumpin' Wargaming. And all these different armies have like these centricated like people who just solely talk about that army. So what I would recommend here is if you find an army that you really, really like, you just literally go on the page anywhere, look up Warhammer 40,000, you see, I like them, they look cool. You look up what their name was, you put the picture wherever, and you find out what their name is, and you go on to Google. I would highly recommend just look up Tyrannid channels, or Gene Stealer channels, or 40k Gene Stealers, or 40k Space Marines, or 40k Eldari, or 40k Drukhari, or whatever it may be, and just scroll through the channels, and eventually you'll find a channel who's just like solely oriented towards that like army, and then just watch their videos, just find out how the army plays. And that's actually what I did with Orcs, and it's how I found Happy Crumpin' Wargaming and War Tactics. I basically just went on Google, looked up Orcs, Warhammer 40k, and then just scrolled through the channels and found like, oh, War Tactics, well, the Orcs must do that, so clicked on it and just watched a bunch of his videos to understand fully how the Orcs work. So this is a very overpowered tactic I would give, and it's going to be basically just to find a dedicated YouTuber to that army, pick him, watch him, and just like understand the army, because their sole purpose is to play that army. So looking at anybody and learning off someone whose sole purpose is to play that army is a huge hack you can imply to basically just like skyrocket your learning process when you're finding out other armies. And the reason I say do a butt ton of research is because, well, you really want to do a butt ton of research. Like, even if it's over the understanding of doing a butt ton of research over multiple armies, eventually it's benefiting you anyway, because you're understanding the game in an even more perspective. So suddenly, if you go from doing butt tons of research, hours of research on Space Wolves, and then move over to like butt ton of research on World Eaters, you still have a full understanding of how Space Wolves work. I'll give you a perfect example. Before I wanted to pick Orcs, I went through tons of armies. I went through Space Wolves, Adeptus Mechanicus, Blood Angels, Grey Knights, and I did tons of research on all 4 of those armies. And now I have a very good grasp of how all 4 of those armies work, and I actually went up against some of those Adeptus Mechanicus players, and Adeptus Mechanicus isn't the best result or the best example, but like the point is, I knew how they worked, so I was able to deploy in a way because I knew how they were going to operate with their special abilities. So I would highly recommend just literally find armies you like, do tons of research on them, and even if you don't eventually pick them, you still understand an army to a full. So if you eventually come across them one day, or you come across their playstyle one day, you easily know. Now that you have done all your research into your playstyle and you've chosen your army and you know absolutely way too much about that army, we can now start building your army and constructing it from the ground up with all the knowledge that you've gathered from the understanding and the research phase of the 40k journey plan I put out for you. So let's jump straight into how exactly you can build your first army. Now it is time to build your plastic band of weirdos. Basically, it's time to follow in your very first list building experience. And this can be very stressful if you've never done it before. But thanks to all the research that you've just done with understanding your army, you probably have a really good fundamental idea of how they work and what units you want to include based off their strengths and weaknesses and what they play best into. Now, before you build your list, I want you to understand this one core concept that's going to help you so much and make the whole list building process so much easier, so much faster, and so much more effective when you're doing that. And that's going to be the philosophy of army purpose. Basically, army purpose, like I've said 100 times on this channel, and obviously a million more, is the idea of orientating your army towards a sole core purpose, whether that be scoring, like not dying, pushing up, killing, anything that you need to do that's going to score you more points, and orienting your entire army around completing that purpose to its utmost effective percentage. A perfect example of this is that my army purpose in a whole is going to be, like with Orcs, is to score primary and win on primary over hoarding points with my vast amounts of numbers. Now, Orcs work very well on the idea of hoarding and melee, so for me, holding scoring points with primary and pushing up is a very effective manner to like win most stuff. And we're following that core idea and building my list around that core idea. I've been able to go up against some hard matchups like Chaos Knights and Tau and Space Marines, and actually compete decently well, or overall win the match in itself, because I solely oriented myself towards that purpose. And the reason this goes with list building is because once you've found your army purpose, suddenly it's not just about going, okay, what units are good based off their strength and their AP. Now it's just like, okay, well, what units are going to really help my purpose? And your purpose could be very different, but it's going to kind of obviously like be quite similar to your playstyle and how the army plays. But the idea is that army is now oriented towards picking units that are going to help them, not who are just generally good. So your neighbor who's gone for a full competitive list for their own reasons, your list might be a little bit different because you've played from a different perspective from the purpose side of things. So building an army based off the idea of selecting a core result and perfecting off that core result. So I'll give you a very good example with my orcs. Again, that's going to be my weird boy and 20 boy squad. Basically, I realized that I need to score on primary, I need to move up fast and get there. So I thought, well, perfect. Who's going to deal with a teleporting 40 OC squad costing like 235 points and have to shoot like 20 guns into it to eventually kill it? And that's what my goal was. A heavy tanky, heavily good scoring unit who's going to be able to hold the point and stay there. Because I also realized that orcs have really good OC. So orienting towards the idea of having good OC was really effective for me because I was allowed to put it on there and have the idea of scoring primary with this teleporting 40 OC unit. And this is what you need to do. You need to look at your index, look at your codex and go, okay, what is my unit going to orientate towards most in this area? And how am I going to put units in my armies to complete this purpose? So if your purpose is killing, you're going to get the most killing units from far range for the most effective points cost. Or if it's going to be scoring, you're going to get the most versatile units and the most effective units. You're going to be able to do the most effective things. Or if it's rushing up in melee and holding the enemy back so you can score secondaries, then you're going to be looking at armies going to be able to charge up fast with deep strike. It's going to be whatever it's going to need to be. You need to find your army purpose and then solely orientate your entire army build around that. Find out what it is and then go, okay, what units are helping me to complete my purpose? And once you find this out, list building is 10 times easier. But that is going to be the list building stage of 40k. So let's move on to the next stage in 40k. Now we are going to move on to the buying and painting and building. Basically, this is all the kind of after you've done all the hard work, you've oriented your army, you've built your army off pure purpose and understanding, and now it's just kind of like the little side phase where you just go and buy all your things, you paint them, and you build them. But this step can also be very critical in saving you either a lot of money or saving you a lot of time. So I'd highly recommend you listen into all the tips I'm about to give. So let's jump straight into this very long and very in-depth stage. Now it is time to get the wallet. It's time to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on your expensive plastic toys. Now, this process can make or break your 40k army. It can either be like the downside to you spending way too much money than you need to, or saving a butt ton of money and being able to buy a lot more things that you wanted to besides your 40k hobby, or including your 40k hobby. Now, there's 3 ways I feel like you can go around this, and it's always about understanding why and how you want to buy miniatures. Do you want them pre-owned? Do you want them completely new and spec'd out? Or do you want like maybe some different looking miniatures and some ones that are going to save you the most money? All 3 of these options are very viable and very, very good, and I'm going to explain how you can do the best out of all of them. So depending on what you're looking for and how you want to play, then it's pretty much easy to like get your kind of army organized. And to find out the way you want to buy your miniatures, I can give you the best pricing and the best understanding so you can save the most money. Now, the first one's going to be you want to buy new miniatures. These are the miniatures if you want to buy like the new spec'd out miniatures. My recommendation for this would be do not buy from Games Workshop. Simply buy from things like local online stores. For me in Australia, we've got the Combat Company and War for Less, or buy from your local game store. The reason I would also highly recommend this is because you build relationships with people. You build them like you're a common customer. If you drop like $400, $500, $600 at that shop, they're going to be very, very grateful for you, and they're going to actually be a lot more present when kind of like in the moment with you. So I recommend buying it from your local game store, and kind of they're going to charge probably like a decent amount. But if you're looking for spec'd out miniatures where you can maybe get some bargaining, because they're also human, so bargaining is an option. And you can also move into the idea of like going around saying, okay, if I buy this, can I get $50 off? And they usually have deals and like price tags and different ways of augmentating the price tag a little bit if you give certain things. So I would highly recommend buying from a game store because you just support them in yourself, you let them keep going, and you also build relationships with the people you're eventually going to be playing with in the first place. Second option is going to be buying pre-owned miniatures. Now these miniatures are going to be like miniatures that you're going to save money, still the same miniature, but it's going to save you a lot more money than having to build them yourself and having probably like even paint them yourself, for example. And for this, I would highly recommend buying it from Facebook Marketplace or your kind of local group organizer, or organizing it with someone at your local games club. The first one's going to be Facebook Marketplace and kind of like the online version of it, and this is highly good, especially if you get some good quality people who like do this professionally. Like I've ordered from people who like do professional kind of like building, painting, and selling of Warhammer 40K models for a cheap pricing, and so you can always find these people online ready to like ship out massive amounts of units that you can just purchase from, and then it kind of saves you time if you're not like too into like the hobby side of it, as you can just jump in and play. And this can be used for any kind of online app you choose to use, as well, you know, you can just buy it from anywhere online that is pre-owned, look up, organize it with people, and get it sorted. Next option is going to be getting someone from your local game store. Now, if your game store, some people actually have like armies, like 7, 5, 6 armies, who they're veterans of the game, are playing since like 5th edition, and just honestly just don't want to like play with the army anymore. So they'd be more than happy to like buy them off you. So you can easily organize with something at their local game store. You just have to go and ask around and maybe push yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit and like get to know these people. Because once again, doing this approach also builds relationships with people in the shop, allowing you to probably have a bit more of a fun time when you're playing your very first game there, or when you're kind of like orientating yourself to be the best person there, and you also probably get more value out of it. Now, the downside with this is that, well, it is a chance to be scammed a little bit, like especially online, so I just be really, really careful when you're buying things and make sure you completely understand the deal and everything that's going alongside it and all strings attached. And the last option is going to be the cheapest option, but the most riskish option. That's going to be 3D printing. Now, 3D printing can work very well whether you 3D print it yourself, you buy a 3D printer, or you get an organization to 3D print it for you, which I would highly recommend. Getting someone else to do it, either, again, at your local game shop, because it builds relationships, all that, find someone who does it, and kind of organize it with somebody, or print it yourself. Now, the only thing with this is yes, it can be the cheapest thing, because you can buy like versions online for like literally like 10 times less the price, but they do have a chance of coming out the way you don't want them to, or a chance of breaking. So it's probably like the highest risk for the highest reward in terms of what you're getting. So that's going to be the 3 options of buying. You're going to be buying new things, buying pre-owned things, or making your own things, all which have upsides and all which have downsides, but it's all about understanding which pain you're most likely to go with. Basically, what downside are you most likely to orientate yourself with, and pick that one. Whether it be, okay, I don't mind if it breaks, or I don't mind if I spend money, or I don't mind if something is a little bit scammed. Whatever it may be, pick what you're going to deal with the most. But that is going to be basically the buying stage. Let's move on to the final and last stage, which is the hobby side of 40k. Now, the very last stage to your 40k journey, which is going to finish off your very first army, is going to be the building and painting stage, or the hobby stage. Now, the biggest tip I have for this stage is to not rush this step. This may seem time consuming, it may seem tedious, and you might just want to jump into your very first game, but this step is very, very important. Yes, you can obviously play games before you build and paint. Like, clubs do not like heavily orientate that rule. People just usually want to play, but I still think it's very important to kind of have a cool looking army on the table, because yeah, sure, you've designed it really cool, but if you just like prime it and then paint one stripe on each of them and call it like, oh yeah, it's army legal, and then it's kind of just like not, people want to play against cool looking armies. Like, come on, everyone wants a cool looking army. So I would highly recommend to not rush this step. Watch some tutorials, take it slow, order some new things if you have to, but definitely be on top and understanding this perspective. Now, as for like kind of like the actual hobby itself, inside and painting and building and all that, for painting and for building, I would highly recommend that you find your own style, because if I'm going to be honest, people kind of don't want to copy and paste of every single army. Now, example for me, who plays orcs, I believe that orcs are quite a very popular army in the 40k universe, so quite a lot of people have different, like, orcs. A lot of people have orcs, so what you want to do is you want to pick a style that suits your own, like kind of style, like kind of like how you picked your purpose, in your 40k army, but now you're picking your style. And what I would highly recommend for this is simply just pick your favorite color. What's your favorite color? What's your favorite shade of color? And paint them that. Nobody cares unless you're going like a tournament. It's like a very specific rule that has to be painted the exact way. No one really cares if you paint pink Death Guard. No one really cares if you paint red Space Marines that aren't Blood Angels. No one really cares if you paint Rainbow Tyranids. Everyone just wants a cool looking army to look at when they're doing it. And my favorite color was yellow, and turns out that the Orc yellow was already a thing. So I just picked that because naturally I wanted to paint my Orcs yellow. So have an army that you in-depthly know is yours. Have your own style. Kit bash a couple of units if you have to. Make the army yours in your own sense. Paint the army yours in your own sense, so you know exactly how you're going to play, and exactly how your army is oriented. Because once you have your own individual army, it feels so unique, so special, and so different compared to other units. And when you got like these cool looking, maybe a couple of kit bash units, a couple of 3D printed units, it's like makes your armies stand out very differently to other armies, and it can make things be so much better than other armies. Well, not better because it doesn't give you buffs, but like having these things, it's just really, really cool. Except for me, because when I paint my Orcs yellow, the explosions are bigger, so it's awesome. But the point is that pick your style, find your own individual kind of uniqueness, and choose that, whether it be building or painting. And that's really the only tip I have for this stage. Just find your own style and go with that. But that is going to be my full comprehensive back and forth guide of how you can start Warhammer 40k in the easiest and most time not consuming way and get it straight away. So I hope you really, really enjoyed this video, and hope to catch you in the next one.